Hello everyone, this is part 27 of What If Naruto Was Born in the Uzumaki clan, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. 2 days later, Nagato Uzumaki heard the thunderous cheers from miles away informing him of the return of his victorious friend. Word had reached him this morning of Iwa's complete defeat at Naruto's hands. With the Tsuchikage and his entire ninja army the land of Earth was now openly being invaded by the Union forces under Lord Arima Uzumaki's firm command. While Naruto returned back to finish the last part of this war. Konoha. There was a time when Nagato would have deemed defeating that powerful nation impossible. Yet Naruto had done the impossible. He defeated not one but 3 great nations and their leaders either directly or indirectly. His friend had upheld his promise of getting the Uzumaki justice and changing the world forever. Looking around at the overjoyed faces of the Union soldiers, Nagato couldn't help but smile. Just weeks ago these same men and women were so uncertain over the future of the war, and despite Nagato's best efforts their victory was not certain. But Naruto changed that. Already his friend was becoming immensely popular both on and off the battlefield. Tales of the king defeating a fully turned Jinchuriki along with the Tsuchikage was already making waves across the elemental nations. Even more was Naruto's act of mercy towards the civilian fighters and mercenaries of Iwagakure who surrendered before him a day later after their final defeat. Any other leader would have butchered all those people in order to stop any prospect of future conflicts. But Naruto had decided to give them one chance. It had earned the king both admiration and scorn from his people. A man of honor was what these people called his friend. And Nagato couldn't agree more. So he smiled happily when he saw that same friend being carried towards the fort on the shoulders of cheering Union soldiers. There was a faint blush on the king's face, still not able to take so much praise and admiration after living almost his entire life in isolation. There was a loud howl as Ghost happily charged towards its master, who was finally placed on the ground, and not a moment later the beast tackled the king, who laughed. After affectionately ruffling his wolf's fur, Naruto finally looked at the entrance and froze. This time he immediately opened his arms and fiercely engulfed the red blur that jumped on him. Tears of joy fell from his eyes as he held the one who gave him life. The last time he had seen her seemed like so long ago. Kushina fiercely hugged her only son and held him in an iron embrace. She nearly watched him once, suffered tea for weeks, had to lose Obito and the other Uchiha boys for this chance. It was too much for her to bear as she openly cried in her son's arms as he held her protectively in his arms. Naruto controlled his own tears knowing there were hundreds of people staring at them both. While his heart wanted to trust these men fully with whom he had fought, the within him knew never to show too much emotion or expose his weakness in the open. So he reluctantly settled for simply holding her as she cried in his arms. "I thought I lost you," she barely whispered. "I am here, mother. You're safe now," he said soothingly, rubbing her back gently. Kushina gently broke her fierce embrace and finally looked at her son and couldn't help but notice that while he looked the same for the most part, but his eyes truly showed just how much he had aged because of this war. While others would marvel and envy the crown on his head, Kushina knew the true weight it placed on her young son's shoulders. Gods, he was barely 16 and a king already. She wanted to apologize to him so dearly. What kind of mother she had been when she couldn't even protect her own son from nearly getting at the hands of people whom she had served all her life. But even the brief time they had spent together showed her that Naruto was a strong man and hated anyone's pity. Even his mother's. So, she settled for a different question. "Where do we go from here?" asked Kushina hesitantly, not knowing what was going on his heart. The smile he gave her relieved all her fears. "There is only one place we can go, mother. Home." Kushina would have cried again on hearing those words if a beautiful blue-haired girl had not stepped between them and gently placed her hand on Naruto's arm. The stunned mother saw her son glance at the girl once as she pointed around at the people still watching. Naruto actually gave a smile to the girl and nodded. And the girl smiled back. Could it be? Kushina's suspicions rose sky high when her son looked back at her. He couldn't hide his faint blush. What he couldn't say in words was revealed all just through that simple reaction. Despite his great feats, the king was actually tongue-tied in front of his mother in this matter. Fortunately for him, neither woman were too surprised or annoyed at his clumsiness. Conan broke the ice by respectfully kneeling before the king's mother and looking back at her with respect and hope in her eyes. "I am Conan, Kushina-sama. I'm glad you are back with us, your son and I are," said Conan calmly, but was stopped when Kushina surprised her by kneeling in front of her. The redhead looked at the young girl for several long moments, much to Naruto's worry, but never once did Conan flinch or shy away. Neither did her welcoming smile and kind look waver for a second even as Kushina scrutinized her. Naruto was just about to say something to defend the woman he loved, but he didn't have to do any such thing as Kushina looked back at him with a playful smile on her lips. "I leave you for a few weeks and you not only become king but also get a girlfriend, Databane," teased Kushina, as her motherly instincts came alive as she pointed her finger directly at his face, making him sweat profusely. "She seems like a very good girl, so treat her with respect and don't be clueless like your father. And if you ever dishonor her." Kushina's warning rant was stopped when she noticed both teenagers blush. Conan avoided her gaze while Naruto's cheeks had turned the same shade as his hair. She blinked several times before realization dawned on her. "Oh," she squeaked clumsily, and saw Naruto was looking everywhere else but at her. "Kushina-sama, no need to explain anything, Conan-chan. I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree," whispered Kushina, as she remembered her and Minato had also started getting intimate at around the same age as these two. She was not angry at either of these kids, but certainly worried that her son was growing up too fast. She could still remember that little babe she had held in her arms. "Mother," protested Naruto, blushing even more furiously as the implication behind his mother's words made a very disturbing set of images form in his creative mind. Kushina rolled her eyes and bonked the boy on the head, much to the amusement of the Union soldiers. "Don't, mother, me, young man. You both are free to live your lives as you wish, but just be careful to not hurt each other in any form," warned Kushina, knowing the wounds of the heart were more painful than any mortal blow to any person. While she could see the growing love between these two, they were still young and Kushina couldn't help but remember the mistakes she and Minato had made. Granted, Naruto had inherited the best from his parents and was quite capable of looking after himself, and Conan did seem like an intelligent and caring girl, but still the mother within Kushina couldn't help but be worried for these two. This time the young couple looked at each other and smiled before turning towards Kushina together. "Don't worry, mother. I love her and I am going to marry her." Kushina fainted. Conan smacked her forehead and glared pointedly at the goofy man she loved, who actually stared back at her with that same clueless look. "What did I do?" Her eyebrows twitched and she had to fight back a snarky remark back at him. She instead made a paper clone and instructed her to carry the unconscious mother back inside the fort. Gods, she could already imagine the ruckus Kushina was going to cause at the declaration of her son when she woke up. Granted, both her and Naruto had agreed to take this important step in their lives, but the way he just revealed it was stupid. Fortunately for him, their friends and comrades came to his rescue, saving him from her rising wrath. It was Hanzo who stepped beside Naruto and gave him a proud smile moments before Nagato finally arrived forward and embraced his childhood friend, a gesture which Naruto happily returned as he finally saw his dear surrogate brother finally be strong enough to stand on his own feet after being injured in his previous battle. When they broke the hug, Nagato was ready for his friend with another witty remark. "Maybe I should just retire from this war and let you handle the rest of whatever that is left," teased Nagato. Naruto wanted to argue against that remark, knowing that the conflict was still not over. But seeing the jovial atmosphere around him, he decided to go with the flow. He was not as clumsy as others thought, even if Conan currently glared at him. "So you can just rest here and freeze your off," he retorted, making Nagato shrug nonchalantly. "Would be a good vacation. Gods know I deserve it, we all do." Naruto smiled and simply nodded at his friend, who also decided to stop the teasing, noticing that Naruto's eyes were searching the crowd. Their eyes met and Nagato saw the unsaid question lurking in Naruto's eyes clearly. "Where is she?" He didn't ask that question out loud, but Nagato didn't need to hear his friend say it in words. And he doubted Naruto would like the answer. So, Nagato simply shook his head, casting his eyes at Conan and the other ninjas around him, including Hanzo himself. Fortunately, Naruto got the hint for once and curtly nodded, but just when Nagato thought the matter was delayed, the king's next words dashed that hope by looking at the other people around them. You all should rest, and so should the soldiers after marching for 2 long days. I'd like to chat with my friend. Don't worry, you all shall receive my summons after some time. I'd also like to chat with Domino Squad in a few hours. It's been so long since we spent time with each other, said Naruto smoothly. Nagato stared in surprise when most of the people actually fell for that evasion, well except for Hanzo and Conan, whose eyes held suspicion, but thankfully neither of them chose to question Naruto further. What? Nagato flinched, despite knowing the expression on Naruto's face was well justified and was exactly the way he was going to create when he discovered what had happened. His next words proved just that. You fool. Don't you know what's out there? Have you forgotten that monster and what he's capable of? Yelled Naruto, shaking the entire room with his blind fury as dark chakra rolled off him in waves. I know. I tried to reason, but she wouldn't listen. Snapped Nagato, remembering another stubborn confrontation he had just a few hours ago with his other best friend. Gods, these two would drive him insane someday. And you still let her go, said Naruto angrily, his hands on the table nearly make it crack. You may be king now and I the union leader, but do you honestly think she would listen to any of my requests or even orders if she didn't want to? She was the wildest among us 3, fierce and independent. She is a wild wolf, brother, said Nagato helplessly. When the storm comes, it is the pack that survives, while the lone and wild wolves s. Naruto's word and that haunted look in his eyes terrified Nagato, for this man knew that fact better than anyone else, as Naruto himself had been a lone wolf most of his life and would not have survived without the help of friends and family. She told me she needed to clear her head to make a decision, whispered Nagato. And marching scouting parties across the border of an enemy nation would help her do that. She's trying to distract herself, said Naruto frustratedly. Had he done more harm than good by admitting his feelings for her? We do need the intel, Naruto. Nobody knows what Orochimaru is up to, and I barely had any capable officers left, since most of them are either injured or with you fighting against a Wagakur. Akeno volunteered herself. I tried to stop her, but she just wouldn't listen to anything and threatened to do it all alone, which made me reluctantly give her the men or risk her doing anything reckless, explained Naruto sincerely. Foolish girl. Nagato saw the worry and panic in his friend's eyes. What is troubling you? Asked Nagato hesitantly. I have fought great men and madmen alike, but nobody terrifies me more than Orochimaru. I have seen the evil in his eyes, and if there ever was someone capable enough of defeating me, then it is him. He has already done it once, confessed Naruto, as memories of Castle Storm haunted him. Don't tell me you're afraid of him, said Nagato in shock, his eyes widening in disbelief. If possible, Naruto's grim look became even more grimmer. It is fear that makes men brave and allows them to stand the ground. Always remember, Nagato, a man who fears can be the one who can be brave and possibly survive the storm, warned Naruto seriously. What do we do? Asked Nagato worriedly. If he had been afraid for Akeno's safety before now, with Naruto's warning, he was scared for his childhood friend. Assemble the men. I'll lead them personally and get that stupid girl back, decided Naruto. You love her, don't you? Naruto saw his friend smiling as he asked that question. Yes. No matter how much she had hurt him, no matter the differences between them or the varied outlook towards life, he would always be there for her. Even if she wouldn't be with him. Akeno was family, and nothing was ever going to change that for him. And he would always look after her for as long as he lived. Nagato was proud of the determined look on Naruto's face and the feelings he had for that girl shining in his stark blue eyes. It showed the Union leader that no matter what happened today or years from now, he could always rely on his friend, for he would always be there for him. For as long as Nagato could remember, Naruto had been there for the people he loved. And he was not going to change that now, come hell or worse. I'll get Domino Squad as well. But I warn you, it's frigging cold out there, said Nagato with a smile. Naruto returned that smile as he placed his hand on Nagato's shoulder by coming forward. We are men of winter, brother. Nagato grinned. Despite wanting to get to his friend as fast as possible, Naruto was disappointed as it was taking more time to find fresh men and women for the mission, as most of the soldiers were very tired or injured. Still, Yahiko was out there doing his best, and in the meantime Naruto had decided to address another important issue before things got hot again. He gave a respectful bow to the woman in front of him who had played a great role in saving his mother. "That is not necessary, King Naruto," said Tsunade awkwardly, quite surprised on seeing that respectful gesture from that young boy. Even Nagato standing there seemed stunned by the action of his friend. "You deserve it for all that you have for me. Granted, it was also for the good of your nation. I cannot ignore what you have done for me," said Naruto sincerely, as he noticed how weak and heartbroken Tsunade looked after the death of her Dan, who gave his life by buying time against Konoha forces and Danzo himself. Tsunade could only weakly nod as the price she had paid for her decision haunted her again. "What will happen to us now?" asked Tsunade hesitantly. While she had heard from hundreds of Union soldiers about Naruto's acts of honor and mercy towards his enemies, she knew his hatred for Konoha ran deeper than anything else in his heart. All Konoha ninjas and Fire Nation's citizens who rise up in arms against the Union will be put to death. But those who surrender will not be harmed. As for your team, their families shall be spared and allowed to live with all their wealth and standing in the society. There are many leaders among the Union who want to see your nation thoroughly destroyed, but I will not let that happen despite everything that has happened, explained Naruto honestly. "You really mean that?" asked Tsunade in surprise. "On my honor, I intend to bring the South into the Union with necessary changes. I also intend to let you rule the land of fire just as promised." Tsunade stared in wide-eyed shock at that statement, not expecting the boy to actually honor that promise after what Konoha did to him at Castle Storm and what Kushina was subjected to all those weeks. But Naruto Uzumaki had proven her wrong. "Naruto, the Union leaders will never accept that. Not one of them trusts Konoha or Fire Nation, while Tsunade-sama has kept her word, but it will not be enough to persuade the others. Even my support of this decision would not sway that decision," warned Nagato, knowing the political ramifications about this decision better than anyone else. Tsunade's shoulders slumped in defeat as she now knew that despite the will of these good-hearted boys, there were other leaders who would not allow that to happen. Her people were doomed despite all the and losses she had suffered. There is one solution to that problem. The other two occupants looked at the king and neither missed his hesitance as he stared at them both. Nagato is the Union leader and is quite respected by the other leaders. And Tsunade-sama is respected by her nation's citizens. Neither side will accept any one party as their new ruler, so after careful consideration I propose the only way we can pacify the South and the Union both in order to keep the peace, said Naruto carefully. "I take it that is something I or she will not like," replied Nagato knowingly, seeing the ashamed look in Naruto's eyes. "Tell me," said Tsunade with such grace and dignity, along with resignation that made Naruto look down, unable to meet her eyes. After all the she had made, it would be pointless if she didn't become the leader of her people. It would dishonor the memory of Dan and Naruto's own half-brother who for that dream. "You two can marry each other." Naruto flinched on seeing not a single reaction from either of the other two. The young boy and the elder woman in her 30s only stared at each other for a very long moment. "Naruto, said Nagato hesitantly. While Tsunade was beautiful and a good woman, she was over twice his age. More than that, there was no form of affection between them, hell, they didn't even know each other at all. But it was Tsunade whose words changed everything. Dan gave his life so that the people of my nation could have a future instead of That cannot happen unless we have peace, and if I can't achieve that, then his would go in vain. What you proposed is logical but heartless. It will pacify my people as I would still be in charge, and it would also keep the Union leaders in check knowing Nagato is ruling by my side as an equal. I will agree to this if only for the sake of my people, but I have only loved one man in my life and perhaps that fact will never change, admitted Tsunade in a calm voice, resigning herself to her fate. Tobirama had always said to her that duty to one's people come first above all. Out of all her family, she had the most vivid memories of her granduncle Hashirama when she was barely a toddler, her parents following soon after in different conflicts. It was her granduncle who raised her. To many he seemed cold and detached, but she had seen that he truly cared about the people and was determined to remain fair and cautious by not getting too attached to anyone. He lived his life by those morals and gave his life in the end for the same beliefs. She respected Hiruzen, who took care of her afterwards, but Tobirama's devotion for his people had left an impact on her. And she could only hope her dear granduncle would understand her actions. She knew her heart was broken, and if she forsake the duty that was the only thing left in her life, then her end would be quite miserable. Perhaps she would just become a broken woman who would live long and maybe drink herself to death. But she was a senju, and it was her duty to protect the legacy of her ancestors. And that was the people of her nation. She looked at the conflicted boy who could be her future husband. He was a child if she compared her age to him, but his feats showed he was a grown man. Tsunade knew it was perhaps even more hard for him than for someone like her who had nothing left to live for except for her duty. But Nagato had a full life ahead of him, and if he did this, then all his chances of finding happiness would go away. If the boy refused, then perhaps he could find true happiness in his life, but it would put the union into another conflict, causing even more pain and suffering. She looked at Naruto, who seemed so trapped by even offering something like this to his dear friend. Nagato glanced at her, and she knew he clearly saw in her eyes that she could perhaps never love him, or offer him the comfort and care he needed. Maybe they could have children in the future if only for peace in the Southern Union, but he would never find love. And then he smiled, such a sad smile that made Tsunade feel even more sorry for him. Do you remember my clan's motto, Tsunade-sama? He asked respectfully. Family, duty, honor, she replied gently, remembering those sacred words on which most Uzumaki had lived their lives, present company included. Naruto's fists clenched and he looked away, unable to meet either person's eyes. It is time I uphold them, declared Nagato. Brother, said Naruto hesitantly, but Nagato shook his head. As the union leader, I have to make of my own. This world that we are creating is my dream, and for it I accept this offer. I promise you, Tsunade-sama, that I shall be respectful and supportive of you. I shall honor you, and perhaps together we can finally bring peace to the South. And you will never have to love me or do anything you don't want. I promise. Tsunade couldn't help but be stunned by Nagato's words. There was a unique strength in him, the willingness to do whatever necessary to uphold his dream. She could respect that greatly. She watched as both boys exchanged a firm nod before Nagato went out of the room, possibly to think over the fate he had resigned himself to. Tsunade now knew that the future of the Union was quite safe in the hands of these two boys turned men. Naruto was a man of honor, respected and feared by the world, a brilliant military commander, and a growing ruler of a stable north. And Nagato was a man of action and cunning, having proven himself capable of dealing with older world leaders at such a young age, and having the mind that led to the true creation of the Union. Alone, either of these Uzumaki were not strong enough to ensure the survival of the Union. But together nothing could stop them. If somebody ever threatened either of them, the other would rise and come to aid. And she truly hoped that such unbreakable friendship and trust between these two would mean a better future for their war-torn world. Conan watched him standing still as she entered the room. She had seen the grim looks on both Nagato and Tsunade's faces as she left. Despite Naruto's order to rest, she was worried about him when news of him going after Akino reached her. What happened? She asked gently. When he looked back at her, there was pain and guilt clearly visible in his blue eyes. And when she came forward to hug him, he didn't resist and told her the new decisions that had been made. Nagato is like a brother to me, and to subject him to something like this, I cannot bear to live in peace while making him and Tsunade suffer for peace. What was the meaning of this entire war if my own brother couldn't be happy afterwards? Asked Naruto miserably. Conan remained silent, letting him speak while gently rubbing his back as her own mind ran through the consequences. It was extremely unfair and cruel fate for Nagato and Tsunade. Perhaps there is another way. He instantly broke the hug and looked back at her in surprise and hope. She was smarter than him when it came to political matters, and if there was a way to save Nagato, he was willing to do it. I'm listening. The Union will need a proper capital and headquarters to carry out its governance after the war. The same place can be used as the base of the armed forces. The South is more prosperous than any other nation, and its cities are suitable for the task. We can convert the Fire Daimyo's capital as the new Union capital and use Konoha as the military base of operations. That way the Union won't have to depend on any other nation for support while ruling from a neutral land, proposed Conan. But what about the leadership? Asked Naruto hesitantly. Appoint Tsunade as the governor of those lands, directly reporting to Nagato and the successive Union leader. That way the people of South will feel protected under Tsunade's governance and the Union leaders be pacified, since Nagato will continue to operate as the Union leader. The presence of the Union army will prevent any future rebellions in the south, that way neither Tsunade or Nagato will have to marry each other. As for the other nations, divide a Wagakur appropriately between Suna and the other nations. We will hold the north while Hanzo-sama will make sure the other nations abide by the new pacts. Together we can do it. But what if the Union leaders don't agree? He asked worriedly, and saw her eyes turn cold. You're the king of the north and Nagato the Union leader, Hanzo and Mifune shall support us too. I have a feeling Mei will too, the only problem will be the Kazekage and the other leaders. We will make them agree for Nagato's sake, he deserves it. His excitement was infectious as he thanked her over and over before rushing out the doors like a young child to tell his friend and Tsunade the good news. But she remained in the room, worry plaguing her heart. Naruto could have simply refused Tsunade any power despite her actions of rescuing Kushina, it would be politically correct, but his heart never functioned that way. His honor would not allow him to do that. It was a serious flaw in him, granted it was also the same trait that made people admire him. But she worried, for he was not a single ninja anymore. He was in a great position of power where one wrong move could be the end of him. Despite the new better world they were building, there would always be ambitious and treacherous people waiting to take advantage for themselves. Naruto refused to believe that, for he saw the best in people, but she couldn't oversee this bitter fact. She could already see them having a family after the war, maybe a few years later, and knowing Naruto he would never leave the north unless circumstances forced him to. He would be happy looking after his people and raising any children he might have in the future. And Conan had a feeling that if those children took after their father, they would be honorable, brave and kind. But just as vulnerable to betrayal. It made her realize just how much she had to be there to keep them all safe. And she decided to do just that for as long as she lived. Hanzo stared at the young boy whom he considered as his son-in-law but and if things went well then his future son-in-law as well. Mounting on his giant white wolf with the crown on his head, Naruto Uzumaki was a handsome sight to look at. Beside him stood Yahiko, Nagato, Daibutsu and Kyusuke, as well as the 700 Union soldiers that would be accompanying them to get Akeno Uzumaki and the rest of her scouting forces back to their camp before launching the final offensive that would end this war. Kushina stood alongside Tsunade, who was smiling after hearing the solution given by Conan. The fact that she would get to rule her land and not forced to marry Nagato for that was a blessing made even more sweet as she saw Jiraiya standing behind Nagato, for he too was a free man now in service of the Union leader. You sure you don't need more men, King Naruto? Asked Hanzo respectfully. We are just getting few of our people back in the main camp before starting the final offensive, Hanzo-sama. These many should be enough for now, replied Naruto calmly. Then we shall wait for your return before starting the strategic meeting regarding dividing a Wagakur's lands, stated Hanzo, getting a nod from Mei and the Kazekage along with several other leaders. To their surprise, Naruto again refused by shaking his head. Conan will be my representative as the future queen of the north. She will speak and make decisions in my stead, gods know she is far better than me, he praised happily, making his Elle blush as she gave him a smile. I'll get Akeno and be back before tomorrow. I promise, he said, as she looked him right in the eye. Do better, Naruto Uzumaki. He grinned and her again before turning Ghost around and charging forward with the rest of Domino Squad along with 700 Union soldiers following after them. Conan watched the afternoon sun shining brightly in the sky, but around it was a strange but beautiful rainbow. It was mesmerizing sight to look at, but she didn't know why, but it sent a chill down her heart. Why did she sense an evil waiting for them silently in the darkness? A group of 5 boys were currently sitting at the edge of a hilltop around a bonfire observing the vast swaths of land before them covered in white sheets of unending snow. To anyone else, their normal winter clothes would have made them appear quite ordinary. But in truth they were far from ordinary now. It was a strange band where one was a king, one a leader of the rising New World Order, 2 high-ranking army officers, and the last one being among the top marksmen in the world. Naruto stared at all these people, most of whom he had never known before 2 years. But now he couldn't imagine himself without any one of them. It made him realize how much he had changed from a loner boy hell-bent on revenge to someone who had become more responsible and considerate of others around him. Most of all, the hole in his life, the emptiness he had always felt for years, was now no more. He had made peace with his father, experienced the love of a half-brother even if he never met him, fell in love with two extraordinary and beautiful women, and made so many great friends and comrades that helped him reach where he was today. So he raised a toast gaining the attention of his 4 close friends. It has been a long and tough road for all of us, and I want to thank all of you for sticking by me no matter what happened, no matter my mistakes. I couldn't have done it without you, confessed Naruto sincerely, earning a kind-hearted laugh from Yahiko. Just who would have thought the great loner would say those words someday? Teased Yahiko, but regardless clashed his beer with Naruto's. It's been quite some time since we all were like this together, just relaxing, said Daibatsu happily, sipping his own drink quietly. I'm quite glad for it. Months of espionage behind enemy lines gets boring after a while, said Kyusuke jovially, remembering all the months he had spent reporting to Hanzo about Iwa's plans. Agreed. Trust me when I tell you, dealing with union leaders is a real pain in the A, admitted Nagato with a laugh. Admit it, you like it, rubbed Naruto. Watch it or I'll be happy to summon you to every one of those boring meetings, warned Nagato, and smirked when his childhood friend paled considerably. Come on, brother, groaned Naruto, earning a round of laughs from everyone else. They all stared at the setting sun in the sky. Having traveled for most of the day in search of Akeno and her scouts, they had all decided to take a short break before deciding their next move. And relaxing like this was a much-needed break all of them had needed after 2 years of constant war and tension. What will all we do once we finish this war? Do you have any plans? Asked Naruto curiously, interested in what plans his friends had for their own lives. Kyusuke eagerly raised his hand and was nearly jumping in excitement. I am going to open an academy, said the marksman eagerly. Of what? Questioned Daibatsu. The smaller-sized boy patted his favorite bow and a group of arrows lying nearby. People really don't value archery these days. I want to change that by teaching the next generation, maybe even make it more popular by having world tournaments, said Kyusuke hopefully, as Nagato tapped his chin. Quite an interesting plan. Remind me to help you out after the war and we can work out something, offered Nagato, much to Kyusuke's surprise. Really? You do that? Asked the stunned archer. It can be made a useful sport. I'm all for the Union citizens engaging in sports instead of deathmatch tournaments. Now that I think about it, I guess I'll be spending most of my time correcting the wrongdoings of the current system and bringing in new reforms. And I'll need help from all of you, said Nagato seriously. You can count on it, Nagato, said Yahiko happily, earning determined nods from the other boys which made Nagato smile as he looked at the largest boy among them. What about you, Daibatsu? The bulky boy shrugged. I'll return home. Hanzo-sama has proposed to make me the Junin commander after a few more years under his tutelage. I guess I'll go for that. That's good. A Megakure will be lucky to have someone strong as you there to protect it, replied Naruto, earning a smile from his friend. I'm actually quite torn. My mother and little brother in a Megakure want me to return home, while Mei wants me to spend some time in Kiri, admitted Yahiko with a blush. I still can't believe you managed to tap that woman, said Kyusuke in disbelief, remembering the stunning Mizukage who had nearly made him faint on first glance through her beauty. Yahiko's eyes twitched in annoyance and he was about to retort when Daibatsu kind-heartedly shook his head while bonking Kyusuke on the head. She likes him. And I'm happy for him. We all deserve to be happy in whatever way we like, suggested Daibatsu. Well said. And we will be once we finish this. Even as Naruto said that he noticed all his friends looking at him now, and it was Yahiko who asked the unsaid question till now. What will you do, King? Mocked Yahiko playfully, earning a brief chuckle from the redhead Uzumaki who took it all in good stride. Return north, I suppose. There are so many things left to sort out there, and most of all I want my mother to live the rest of her days in peace in a zoo. I guess I'll spend the rest of my life trying to maintain the peace, revealed Naruto, but didn't say out loud his apprehension about Orochimaru's next move. He had initiated this conversation for he knew it is the thought of what would follow after the conflict that drives most warriors to fight. And after hearing the dreams and wishes of his friends, the weight on his shoulder had grown quite immensely. But he was willing to shoulder this responsibility, for all these people had gone out of their way to help and support him, and to fulfill all their dreams was his duty. His friends nodded at his decision to return back to the north after the war, understanding his reasons behind that, for they all knew that Naruto wanted to go home more than anyone else. You think Orochimaru is planning something? Asked Yahiko after a while, looking at his own beer. He already has, for that's the kind of man he is. And we have to stop him no matter what happens, said Naruto decisively. Don't worry. We'll kick that snake's A for sure, replied Kyusuke confidently, and smacked his palms together excitedly. Yeah. F him, agreed Yahiko. Yes, so be it. Naruto watched all the boys nod back at each other before bumping their fists together in unison. He blinked when they all looked back at him expectantly, and he hesitantly joined his fists with them. And it was Yahiko who looked at all of them with determination in his eyes. We've all been through a lot of S together, and I'm sure we'll kick more in the future. So I promise you this, that no matter where I go, I'll always be a friend to all of you. Me too. Need some help anytime. Just call, said Kyusuke with a smirk. Same here, replied Nagato and Daibatsu in unison with smiles on their faces. Naruto smiled back at his friends, who were his family now in all but B, as he looked them all in the eye. For Domino. They all bumped fists together once again before yelling together. For Domino. 2 hours later, Naruto looked ahead at the vast forest before him, expanding far and wide, threatening to swallow everything. Standing alone away from his soldiers and friends, he tried to control the pain flowing through his heart. This place had always been a source of pain and suffering for him. It was here that he lost dozens of clansmen, men, women and children who had believed in him and whom he couldn't protect against Konoha Anbu that butchered them. Here where Akeno and so many Uzumaki children were captured and experimented upon like animals. What pained him even more was that most of those same children had perished by now because of the war he started in the first place. This was the place where he nearly killed his half-brother and attacked his own father, when in the end they both S for him. He remembered the gruesome M of Konoha forces orchestrated by him. A man of honor. He didn't think people would still call him that if they knew he was the one who started this B war that led to death of thousands. He had been so blind and consumed by hatred and rage back then, only willing to inflict his wrath for the suffering endured by his people. But now, after 2 years of B war and watching thousands of civilians and soldiers S, broke his heart. For he was the only one responsible for all this madness. But he had changed after watching all that suffering, when he truly saw the agony of others was greater than his own. It was why he had tried to offer peace to Konoha. It was why he had spared all those who were civilian and mercenary fighters. It was why he was going to spare all those Konoha people who surrendered regardless of what the other Union leaders wanted. Even Conan thought he was doing all these things for his honor, but what she or anyone else didn't understand was the fact that he was far from honorable. He grew up as an and killed nearly 300 people as part of his missions without questions. He started a war that created such a vast river of B and suffering that would make the world shiver for a very long time. King, man of honor, undefeatable, Lord Fourth, Dark Lord, Conqueror. He looked at his trembling hands and saw the sheer amount of B on them. Tears threatened to spill from his eyes. All he had wanted was to bring justice for his people, yet it had all led to so much pain and suffering. And now here he was again back in the south, the place where this madness started and the place where it would end. When he came here he had been a different person, when he left he had changed completely, and now that he returned he was a totally different person again after the horrors of war changed him completely. All he wanted was to end this war so that this suffering could stop. He would never forget what he had done, whether right or wrong he didn't know, and only the people of this world could decide that. All he could do now was try to atone for all his crimes by trying to give the people of North better lives and helping Nagato rule the Union. And he pledged to himself that he would never again return here to this place that always brought the worst out in him. He felt 2 hands being placed on his shoulders and saw it was the 2 people who had seen his darkest side in these lands. Nagato looked at him calmly without any accusation or pity, as he also remembered the way he had helped Naruto start this war. And Yahiko didn't blink and gave his sad friend the strength, as he too remembered the gruesome M of Konoha forces he had helped Naruto stage in the first place. I'm never returning south after this, said Naruto sadly. I understand, replied Nagato patiently, squeezing his friend's shoulder, offering what little comfort he could, knowing the burden Naruto had carried on his young shoulders all this time. A burden he still carried to this very moment. None of us are the same boys anymore, brother, said Yahiko silently, remembering the boy who had shivered on his first mission against Iwa forces, and 2 years later that same boy had participated in M.S.A. Royal Daimyo's entire family along with hundreds of soldiers, and so much more. Will all of us be ever able to live each day after all that we have done? Asked Naruto in a whisper. We have to, replied Nagato. There is no other choice. Naruto silently nodded because there was no other choice even as Daibatsu and Kyusuke stepped beside them. Just like them, these two boys had also changed and were now hard men who knew how horrible war truly was. Then let us try our best so that no more war breaks out, proposed Daibatsu. Never again, said Kyusuke sadly, remembering the hundreds of people who had fallen victim to his arrows. It was the reason why he was going to quit as a shinobi and become a teacher so that he could try to change things. Naruto looked at them all and saw in their eyes that each carried their fair share of guilt and pain, but just like him they were all trying to move forward and be a better person than they were yesterday. All every one of them could hope for was to become better persons every day and possibly teach the next generation what horror a war truly is. To give their people, regardless of which nation they belong to, a great future that would overshadow this era of darkness. They have a location where Akino's party was last seen, said Nagato, breaking the silence. The men are ready. I suggest we take a small group rather than the entire force, to be more quiet and fast, suggested Yahiko. We should not linger too long in enemy territory at night, warned Kyusuke. I agree as well, said Daibatsu. Very well, consented Naruto, as he whistled for Ghost. 1 hour later, Naruto watched as his giant wolf sniffed the ground a few times before looking towards the western direction. He silently gave the signal, making dozens of ninjas hidden in the trees move forward, their movements masked by the moonlight that was covered behind the dark clouds. Ghost was the only one of their party on the ground, while the rest of the platoon had taken to the trees, keeping noise discipline. Naruto himself was floating in the sky in the form of dark smoke, using his own sensory powers to their fullest in hopes of searching for his friend and her missing men. He tried to keep his fear at bay as they expanded their search. While they had received information that Akino's group was last spotted in this sector, he was yet to find her. He willed his dark powers to flare, trying to search for any sign of negative emotions, be they fear, hatred, pain or sadness. He could feel them all no matter how far the person was. There, Nagato saw his friend quickly charge forward and motioned the others to follow after him, knowing Naruto must have found something. Their platoon, apart from Domino members, comprised of Uzumaki and Northerners, all tough men and women who had survived 2 years of brutal war. Yet on arriving at the location they all froze on seeing the sight before them. Nagato grimaced on seeing the Union armor and uniform still lying on the soldiers who lay kneeling on the ground. Unmoving, not a single breath coming from them despite the cold night. Yahiko directed one of the northern soldiers up front, receiving a firm nod in return. The blonde-haired northerner moved forward carefully, searching for any traps or enemy presence nearby, but thankfully found none. Yet it did little to ease his own fear as he approached the first body of their fallen ally. The northerner moved his left hand forward to touch the soldier until he saw a mild flash coming from the bushes. He looked in the direction, now alarmed for an enemy was here, until he saw a series of hand seals performed by the unknown person declaring themselves as a Union soldier. Kyusuke had already started to move in the direction of the discovered ally, but as a precaution had kept his bow trained on the shinobi. He carefully stepped past the lone northern soldier still standing behind the Union soldier with his hand half an inch away from touching the body. The Omega Core archer had not detected any B-traps so far, but it was best to be alert. Naruto watched his friend step in front of the bush directly in line of sight of the hidden ally. The amount of fear he felt from this person made the king wonder just what they had seen. His eyes slightly widened when he saw a familiar mop of silver hair poke out of the thick bush as the same person instantly placed her trembling hand over Kyusuke's mouth, stopping the archer's shocked gasp. With her other free hand, she waved her hand frantically in the opposite direction, making her message clear. Run. Naruto had known her all his life and she was one of the bravest people he had ever met. But the look in her eyes spoke of some unspeakable horror she must have seen, so he steeled himself and silently gave the signal to start retreating. The northern soldiers looked at him once and then at the B of their fallen soldiers. Were they supposed to just leave their here to rot? But one firm glance from their king made them reluctantly start retreating, maintaining noise discipline as Naruto watched the moonlight about to emerge again as the clouds started to move. Kyusuke was already being dragged away by a terrified Akeno swiftly, who was running as if the hounds of hell were after her. He was about to rush towards her to take away her fears but was stopped when Ghost lowly growled. Turning back, Naruto froze. As the moonlight fell on the lands back again, he saw a sight he never thought possible. The mangled BFS Union soldiers got back on their feet, showing the gruesome mortal wounds. But what was more terrifying was the foul chakra that started to envelop their corpses as they started to turn into wild beasts. Up from the sky, the king could only watch in horror as the dark chakra, which was so foul and malicious even for him, spread through the soldiers, making them gain more beastly form. Even Ghost turned tail and ran before the creatures could catch sight of him. But Naruto remained frozen as his worst fears came true. That monster. He had known about Orochimaru's madness, his depravity, the evil that lurked in those dangerous eyes. But this. No man had ever done something so inhumane except for Kaguya Otsutsuki. The beasts wildly thrashed around looking for anything to kill, but Naruto noticed the moment any of them stepped into shadows away from the moonlight, the dark chakra corrupting their beast started to recede, making them more slow and dim-witted. Without wasting another second, Naruto retreated back towards his forces. He needed answers, and only one terrified person could give it to him. They had safely returned back to their camp by midnight, making extremely sure to avoid any further contact with anyone else. Akeno had not said a single word and had not stopped running until she reached the camp and soon collapsed from exhaustion. Naruto had asked a few Kunoichi to look after his friend and inform him as soon as she woke up. Judging from what he had seen so far, Akeno was probably the only survivor among the platoon of scouts. That had been some time ago, as he currently sat beside Akeno's bed holding her cold hand in his warm ones. She had been reckless and impulsive in her actions, but he was glad that she was still alive. After seeing what had been done to the Union soldiers, only painted a more darker fate awaiting them all. The enemy was up to something very dangerous, he could feel it. Despite knowing that Orochimaru would never surrender, Naruto had hoped the resistance would be weaker, but now after seeing what he knew the war was getting even more risky. He glanced at his friends, all of them standing in the same room in different corners with grim looks on their faces. Naruto, is that you? His head snapped instantly towards the source of that question and smiled in relief on seeing her eyes gingerly opening, making him grip her hand more firmly. Yes, I'm here, he replied happily. You're not a dream. He felt so sad on hearing her hopeful yet terrified voice. Just what more horror had she seen that made the strong and fierce Akeno ask such a thing? No, I'm not a dream. You're safe now among your friends, all of us, said Naruto gently, brushing her hair and her forehead. Akeno hesitantly looked around and saw the familiar faces of her teammates. All of them gave her encouraging smiles even as Nagato came beside her, grasping her remaining free hand. The boys. She teared up on seeing they had all come for her, saved her, if they hadn't. She shivered on remembering those dark memories and what she had seen, which made her whimper. Look at me. And then she looked in his eyes that had so much strength and courage in them. You're an Uzumaki of the North. You can do this, encouraged the king. What happened out there, Akeno? What did you see? Asked Nagato patiently, trying to ease the frightened girl as the others waited for her to answer. I saw. What? I saw. Whole border towns gone. The people were not there, she whispered. Did they leave? And how many towns are we talking about? Asked Yahiko seriously. No. Just gone. There was nobody there. I first thought they were evacuated, considering Union was marching south, but then they all came back, confessed Akeno in a shaky voice. Came back? What do you mean? Asked Kyusuke worriedly. All those people, thousands of them, were turned into those monsters. We thought they were sick with chakra poisoning, tried to help my men were down and devoured. Naruto's heart stopped cold even as tears fell from her eyes. He had seen chunks of F torn off on the B of the turned Union soldiers and also the fact that there was a strange seal on their N. It was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Those beasts could not see or speak anymore, and in the dark they were even more mindless, but the way they reacted to even the slightest sound was terrifying. And his terror only became even worse as Akeno continued. Many of them, but they rose again and again. Only beheading could stop them. My forces were overrun, and we ran, but there were thousands of them, and they found what was left of my platoon, and Naruto nodded as she couldn't continue further, not that he needed to know any further. You should rest for now, he advised, as she gripped his hand more fiercely, afraid of losing him. Stay with me, she pleaded. I have to make plans to counter this threat. But, surrounded by Union officers, King Naruto stared at the inner map of the Land of Fire where many of the border towns had been marked in red crosses. The problem in this terrain was that it was so vast that any great army could easily hide and ambush enemy forces when they advanced. They also had the sea on one side to smuggle in more supplies and mercenaries easily, and had a ton of wealth accumulated through years of conquest. And now his problems had become even worse since Orochimaru had started to turn humans into monsters by implanting corrupted chakra in their B. Jiraiya. The older man had been shocked and horrified when he learned what had happened to his own people. At first he didn't believe Naruto's words, but when everyone else backed him, the Konoha shinobi's heart had been broken even more. But it had also strengthened his resolve to end this war even sooner and made him willing to do anything. Orochimaru is determined to have the Union army be stuck in conflict with those turned monsters. While they can be that is for sure, but we will lose people and more importantly precious time. Time which he can use to stage a proper ambush, and that is something that I cannot allow, said Naruto seriously. What do you want me to do? Asked Jiraiya seriously. Take an advanced strike team of 100 soldiers and start clearing out the towns on the western front. Everyone who has been turned, and if there are survivors make sure to send them further inland rather than towards our forces, because our supply lines are already thin and we cannot afford to take the responsibility of thousands of civilians at the moment. We can do that after the war is won, but now, explained Naruto frankly. Very well, replied Jiraiya curtly, earning a nod from the king, who also knew that the old man understood what was at stake. Without another word, the Konoha ninja stepped outside the command tent in order to start the preparations for his mission. Kisame. The former Kiri swordsman looked up on hearing his friend's voice. You will lead another advanced strike team of 100 soldiers and what is left of Hiden's cult and attack the eastern towns. The same rules of engagement shall be applicable. Any questions? Asked Naruto frankly. I'll do that. Just don't get K till I return, replied Kisame with a grin, making Naruto smile faintly. Understood. When Kisame also stepped outside in order to carry out his mission, Naruto glanced at his 5 friends who looked equally concerned and determined as him. I've already sent Konan the message to assemble our entire army here within 24 hours. While Kisame and Jiraiya attack from 2 different directions, making the enemy believe we have fallen for their trap, said Naruto honestly. It was Nagato who saw what his friend was intending to do. Blitzkrieg. Naruto nodded at his friend's deduction and pointed a route that led straight into the heart of Land of Fire directly towards the daimyo's capital. We'll launch a massive blitzkrieg attack right through the heart of the Land of Fire, taking the enemy by surprise. Speed will be the key here, and we'll have to take as much of territory as quickly as possible. We will not stop or rest for a single moment. Every day and night we'll attack and advance. I'll divide the army into 2 groups, and every time one of the group is advancing, the other will hold the rear and rest, only to do the same thing when the first group has completed their part and repeats the same activity. Under no circumstances are we to stop, or you'll face ambushes that will see us down. Orochimaru knows these lands better than any of us, and it is best if we don't give him any time to react or plan. Agreed. All of his friends nodded and quickly stepped outside the tent, but only Nagato stayed behind, seeing Naruto still staring at the map with a deep frown on his face. You're worried, said Nagato frankly, receiving a grim look from his childhood friend. Death comes for us, brother. Gods help us all if we're not ready. The morning rays of the sun woke her up from the peaceful sleep she had been deprived of for the past few days. As she gingerly opened her eyes, she saw someone sitting by her bed. On closer inspection, she was relieved that it was Naruto, who was currently twisting a chess piece of the king in his hand. Last night, she had been worried and afraid of being alone. After seeing and fighting those monsters, watching her soldiers and turn into monsters themselves had terrified her, for never had she something so unnatural and evil before. But Naruto's clone had stayed by her and hummed something silly until she went to a peaceful smile. But the one sitting beside her was no clone but the real person, which was proved when he glanced back at her with the same concerned gaze he had always showered on her all their lives. "What are you thinking?" she asked curiously after noticing his deep gaze that was previously focused on the king's chess piece. "So much has changed. So many great warriors and people have the world has lost much of its luster and awe," he replied with a smile, remembering the various cages, his own father and other warriors who men had feared and admired. One whose powers dwarfed those of other men. "Is that a bad thing?" she asked, but he shook his head. "Quite the opposite, I think. The age of chaos where heroes and geniuses are needed is ending, and the age of stability where reconciliation, cooperation and order will be valued is coming. Katsuro-sama used to say to me that the collective wisdom and resolve of ordinary people is better than that of one genius. And I also believe that an era of peace is a time where lack of talent isn't seen as a vice and where people don't aspire for impossible things." "Sorry, I'm rambling," he said with a warm smile. She smiled back at him as he helped her sit straight on the bed. "You've changed. For the better, I hope?" he asked cheekily, making her touch his cheek. "Very. There is only so much broodiness and mood swings of yours that I could handle, and I've handled a lot," she teased. He tried to fight it but in the end couldn't help but laugh boisterously, remembering all the times he had pissed her off with his erratic behaviors. And as he continued laughing, Akeno couldn't help but see how dazzling he looked bathed in the sunlight, his voice and smile even more warmer than that of an Ani that had given light to humans for eternity. And she wanted to wake up every day to see that same smile. "I'm sorry, Akeno," he whispered after his laughter had subsided. "Why?" she asked curiously. It wasn't often that he apologized to anyone. "For all the I've put you through all our lives. I don't know why you even tolerated someone like me. I guess I took you for granted, knowing you'll stick by me no matter what happens. In doing so, I forgot about how you feel or your own principles of life. I even selfishly asked you to share my love with someone else. I didn't realize how wrong I was back then. I foolishly thought that since you always supported me, you would do the same in this matter. I admit it hurt and made me angry as well, but you were right and I was wrong." Akeno was stunned after hearing him admit such facts, knowing how much strength he would have needed to confess something like this. Her wide eyes stared at him as he continued with his eyes downcast to the ground in shame. "I'm a selfish man, Akeno Uzumaki. But it is also true that all I wanted was you to be happy, to achieve your dreams and live in peace. I thought that happiness of yours depended on you being with me, but you are much stronger than that." He looked her in eyes, hoping she could see all he felt for her. "Live, Akeno. Be happy, be loud, be annoying, be emotional, be free, and know that no matter what happens, I'll love you forever." He got up and walked towards exit, feeling relieved himself because he knew that it was the right thing to do. She was safe and sound, and he would make sure she lived the happy life she truly deserved. That was all that mattered and nothing else. "Naruto." He stopped on hearing her voice and hesitantly turned around. Bam! He yelped in pain when a flower vase connected right across his temple. "A tie." His breathing stopped when he saw a silver-haired demon standing before him with her hair flowing wild in all directions and righteous fury in her eyes. Oh, he knew this look, and whenever any Uzumaki woman got that, it was better to run. "You moron. Couldn't you have said something nice like this the first time?" she yelled, throwing a chair at him this time, which he barely managed to avoid. "Have you lost it, you crazy woman?" he yelled back in fear and anxiety. Why the hell was she so angry in the first place? Didn't she say he said something nice, then why? "Itai," he yelped as this time a water bottle hit his face. By the time he managed to recover his vision, the fuming Akeno was right in front of his face. "Crazy. Yes, I am definitely one for falling in love with a moron. Thank the gods my hair is silver, or you would have made 'em all white with your antics all these years. Half of the time you were broody, the other half an A. And the one time where you proposed to me you talk about political schemes and personal benefits like it was AF trade deal. Barker, she chastised, bopping him on the head again. But it was true, he mumbled as he nursed his numerous bumps. What was that? She snapped. Nothing, nothing, he replied instantly, waving his hands comically in a disarming fashion. You truly don't know how to talk to people, much less propose to someone. Would it hurt to be this romantic and honest in your words instead of spamming out all the crap you earlier said like a dumb brick? She asked in frustration. Naruto lowered his head in shame on realizing that he had hurt her even if he hadn't meant that. How could he forget that Akeno was not Conan? This Uzumaki girl lived by her heart, unlike Conan, who rationally thought out everything with her sharp mind. Look at me, Barker, she retorted, pinching him harshly on the arm. Ow. He groaned in pain, but did look up to see her staring at him intently. I want to eat ice cream and ramen every day. Huh? He asked dumbly, earning another pinch from her sharp fingers. Stop it. Shut up and listen, King, she said mockingly, making him scowl, but he didn't say anything. I want to go out on long walks and talk about everything at night. I want to go for short trips anywhere once or twice a month. And I want to buy good dresses and start a medical hospital of my own to teach our people the healing arts. Do you understand? He blinked and scratched the back of his head in confusion. Did she have to hit him so much just for these simple demands? Ah, okay. Akeno smacked her own forehead in frustration on seeing his clueless look. Gods, was he dropped on the head or something as a baby? Naruto, hi, quote, yet was also a clueless idiot and a moron who found it hard to comprehend situations which normal humans would understand very easily. But then again, she had known all of that about him for a long time. She had her doubts and fears when he proposed to her in the first place, and she had not at all liked what he had said and the way he had said it. It had sounded to her more like a political deal than a proposal of love. He should have known she didn't give a damn about politics, never had or never will. When she forced him to make a choice, deep down she had known he would choose Conan, and that would have been okay with her as long as he was happy. But she had feared that he would also cast her out of his life, and as frustrating his friendship was, it was worth it. That was a fact she had never regretted even once in her life. But he proved her wrong again by coming to save her despite her harsh words. He had stayed by her side despite the way things had gone downhill between them, and now she could see he had changed. There were still traces of the boy she had fallen for, but also evidence of a better and more mature man developed in there. Although it didn't change the fact that he was quite silly. All her doubts and misgivings about fighting for his love their entire lives had vanished when he wished for her happiness over his own, when he promised to love her and care for her even if she didn't love him back or be with him. It showed her that he would truly be there for her, no matter what happened or who else happened to be in their personal lives. Even if it was another woman. And she had to admit just letting him go and have Conan grab him all for herself didn't sit well with Akeno. Hell, it made her furious. As he watched the smoke disappear, he couldn't help but be happy for the two idiots. Finally, that will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.